lots to talk to Tobias Ellwood, who is the chair of the Defence Select Committee, Conservative MP, of course, backbencher, previous Defence Minister. So much to talk to you about, but I just wondered if I could pick up on that. So many unions going on strike at the moment. This is going to be a big problem for your party.
Well, I'm pleased to see the Prime Minister stepping forward over the weekend, calling in the various parts of the public sector to have those discussions. I visited Bournemouth Hospital last week. Amazing to see the energy and determination there they are to do their job. But this is a very, very difficult winter indeed because of COVID and flu and so forth. We need to get the pay, we need to get the pensions sorted, we need to look at recruitment and retention. I'd like to see the bursary system come back in, for example. That'll help recruit for nurses to get them back in. We've got talks today, education-wise. Gillian Keegan is having those discussions. So I'm pleased to see rejuvenated energy coming in to solve this, because ultimately, the longer these strikes go on, the harder the more they damage the economy. And of course, it's the economy that we need to be able to pay for the public sector as well.
OK, thanks for pivoting to that, because I know that you were coming to talk to us about Ukraine and also about Harry. What was he thinking of when he was talking about how many people he had killed in Afghanistan?
I think, like many, sorry to see this all play out. I've got huge respect for anybody that served in our armed forces or is serving, particularly those who went to Afghanistan. But what we saw there, talking about kill counts, I think was ill-advised, deliberately put in the book, perhaps to sensationalise. But ultimately, we're very proud of our armed forces, the professionalism. That isn't just about the combat effectiveness. It's how we deal in the aftermath of battle, you know, with prisoners of war, with those who are injured, indeed those who have been killed as well. We go there because for a higher cause, to show that we are an exemplar of how we can fight following the Geneva Conventions. And I do worry that this is going to have security implications. One of the rare occasions that I worked with Prince Harry was in the Invictus Games in Sydney and in Toronto and so forth. Incredible effort. This was his design. This was, you know, his creation. And I'm now concerned that something which has been so important to veterans to help rehabilitation will now suffer because there could be security implications of him participating in that.
So you think that there's a real worry about security with the Invictus Games?
I think it'd be good for, who am I to advise, but from a military perspective, this is something that's generated an awful lot of discussion, understandably. We simply don't talk about this, and I think clarification from Prince Harry as to what he meant there. You read the full text of where he talks about this, and he's absolutely there for the right reasons. But that one sentence that talks about the number, I think there needs to be a clarification. Otherwise, this could easily inspire jihadist extremist groups who don't need much of an excuse to find cause to do the West and indeed us harm.
Taliban in charge, of course, in Afghanistan again, and there have been demonstrations. There reference to chess pieces. Now, we need to see that in context, but even to use the phrase of chess pieces when we're talking about human beings, some may see as quite a challenge.
You know, in the heat of battle, any individual has to ask themselves how they get through that day. Indeed, are they going to get through that day? But you keep those thoughts to yourself or share them, you know, with your fellow soldiers. The idea that you then place it into a book, as I say, I think that was ill-advised and requires qualification.
How concerned are we about the continuing situation in Ukraine? Obviously, we are terribly concerned. Who is winning that war?
Really, really good question. 2023 is a pivotal year. We've done so well in providing military assistance, but this is all about tactics. We now need to move on to strategy. Where does this go? Where does this actually lead to? And it's so important that we then look to say, what is success? What does the mission involve? What are we trying to conclude this year? Russia's ability to endure hardship is far greater than ours. So I'm worried that the West may lose interest. So let's confirm what our objectives are. Let's actually make sure that we can provide the weapon systems. I would like to see a weapons factory in eastern Poland, for example, created in order so that there's a long-term production line of equipment rather than the ad hoc contributions that are coming from the West. Odessa, how often have we spoken about getting the grain out of that port? Still not happening. You know, had the war not happened, inflation here in the UK would be just 4%. We go back to those strikes and so forth. What a different scenario that would be in negotiating pay increases. And then, of course, there is long-term security for Ukraine. Is Russia going to then attack in a couple of years' time, even if we push them out this time? They need to be able to join an umbrella of security there. can't join NATO, the Joint Expeditionary Force is something that I think they should be invited to join. These are all strategic objectives that we can clarify this year. 2023 will be a critical year.
OK. Talk to me about Westminster Accounts. I'm sure you've had a look at the tool that we launched yesterday. What do you think?
Important. All MPs can look at their own electorate and justify where money comes from, where it goes to, and so forth, how things are actually spent. So absolutely welcome, any scrutiny that provides that. I think it's important to perhaps distinguish between what are created through the election expenses, because that's the way our system runs in the UK. We have to request financial support to run campaigns. That needs to be distinguished from APPGs, from the visits that take place and so forth. I went on a delegation to Taiwan. I've been to Odessa, as I just mentioned before. I went to Doha to meet the Taliban. I'm the only MP to have met the Taliban. I couldn't do these things without some form of support. And, of course, I earned extra funding through being a reservist, which is everybody's allowed to do that, and indeed as a vaccinator. So there are, as indeed other MPs did as well. So there are ways that, those numbers do add up, separate to what I think is really the headline-grabbing stuff, which is the rather large sums that people are earning separate to their work in Parliament themselves. But again, you would then, the argument is, I think, a very powerful one as well. We mustn't lose connectivity with the people, with the businesses, with the communities that we represent. But ultimately, every MP needs to look at their own electorate in their own constituency in the eye and say that they justify, what they've been earning. Well,
you're a brave man, because you're one of the few that have been willing to come on to talk to us about their figures, and these are yours from 2019. Declared £43,000 in extra income, gifts and donations, all completely above board. Here are the 10 listed sources of income, the largest being from Shabani Yas Forum, UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 8,650. The smallest, £300 from Renaissance Strategic Advisors, all completely above board, as we say. How does it feel when you see it in black and white?
Well, let's go back to that very first figure, because that's where you started from. Yeah. I think 43,000. Yeah. It could be construed, particularly if perhaps you're the opposition, down in Bournemouth, to say, I've received 43,000 in gifts, that somehow I'm beneficiary of that amount of money. And that's, I think, I hope you'd agree, would be misleading. So I think it would be helpful to make sure that that isn't lost in what you're trying to do, which is ensure that there's transparency here. I've not benefited from £43,000. I've had to go on trips to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to learn about what's happening, what threats are coming over the horizon, so I can sit here and speak with some authority on these matters.
Which we appreciate you doing. I mean, just to make clear, we don't combine earnings and donations. There are two very separate things, as you say, and we make that very clear as part of the website, that they are separate. We've already also separated them out into journalism earnings yesterday, donations today. So we make it very clear.
Yeah, but that figure, for me, 43,000, is what many people may take away to say, my goodness, Ellwood is earning 43,000. And we both know that's incorrect. So pleased that you're doing this. I think just understanding that, I think that's where, MPs as a whole would want absolute clarification to be able to spell it out as to how that money adds up, separate to what might be, being accumulated as private earnings.
Yeah, well, as we know, we only use publicly available information, is what I was trying to say, simply a tool for making the workings of Parliament more transparent and designed to give the public a better understanding of how politics is funded in this country. But you then look at how much somebody like Theresa May earns, £2.7 million since 2019. I mean, that's eye-watering.
I deliberately said what I said earlier, that every individual MP needs to be able to look at their own electorate and then justify, their earnings themselves. And the power of, the elections in this country, people will then make their own judgments on that, or listen to the justification as to why that money was earned and in what context. I would also add, though, that perhaps, if I may humbly, ask to advance this, is to show how much is then given to charity. I don't know how much Theresa May gives to charity of that amount of money, or indeed any MP. The money I earned from being a vaccinator, I gave to a Caring Canines, to my local charity, which I'm honoured to be a patron of. So I think, again, the full context, ultimately, what I wouldn't want, I want scrutiny. I think every MP would want more scrutiny. I'd hate to see people being put off becoming an MP, even considering standing for public office, whether it be local authorities or indeed in Parliament, because they feel that somehow, when you all add this up, it's then further unfair scrutiny. So great you're doing this. I think wider context, I think, would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, MPs are not obliged to say how much money they give to charity. Some MPs do, some don't. It's up to them. I mean, if Theresa May is watching this morning, good morning to you, ma'am. If you'd like to tell us how much you give to charity, I'd be thrilled to come and talk to me tomorrow. Make room for you anytime between 7 and 10. Do you think that MPs should have second jobs?
Yes, I do, because there is and I see this a lot, it's very easy to be caught up in that Westminster bubble, to be segregated, from the wider world and understanding what's going on. You can tell, and you've had people on the sofa, when they know what they're talking about and when they don't know what they're talking about. And you can see that in the chamber as well. So those people that do have a connection with a business, an understanding of what's going on, so important to have that connectivity. But it needs to be done responsibly.
OK, it's always great to see you. Happy New Year. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thanks.